It is an undeniable fact that the future of motoring is electric. And that scares a lot of us because there are a lot of brands that we love, and we love because of the experience of driving these cars with internal combustion engines. There's also the fact that a lot of these car makers, as they move to electric, source their motors and batteries from the same places. And as a result, there is a concern that all cars are going to end up feeling the same. But Porsche has decided that it would not only create its first all-electric vehicle, but with it, prove that electric motoring doesn't have to be boring. This is the Porsche Taycan Turbo S, and I can scarcely believe I'm saying this. Welcome to the Malaysian Motoring Review. Now, the thing about the Taycan is that where other car companies decide to throw the book out when it comes to design of their cars by enabling the move to electric, Porsche has decided that their first electric car ought to look like a Porsche, which is why you still get the multi-beam LED headlights with the 4-point signature DRL, as well as this very familiar shape. Although now it sort of bleeds down into the bottom here, where there are air intakes that feed air into the wheel wells and to create a nice curtain of air over the 21-inch alloy wheels fitted to this car. That is an option, however. Now, this is a Turbo S, and you can tell that because of the carbon fiber down on the front lip. This is standard for the Turbo S. Other models do not get the carbon fiber, and that's one way to tell it apart. Down the side, the profile of the Taycan also looks very Porsche. It's not a Panamera, that's one thing for sure. It looks almost like a 911 that just got stretched a little bit. And as far as I'm concerned, the proportions look lovely. The beautiful sweeping curves over the wheel arches, the big swollen haunches to this car, and the beautiful detailing down the side just make this car look fantastic. Now, as I said earlier, as we're looking at the side, you will notice that this car also rides on carbon ceramic brakes, which is why you have yellow brake calipers, and the brake discs themselves are coated in this material that gives it a sheen that apparently reduces brake dust so that you don't have to clean the wheels so often. But then again, in a design like this, it shouldn't be too hard to clean anyway. Now, at the rear of the Taycan, it looks very much like a modern Porsche. You have the LED light bar that goes all the way across. You have this retractable spoiler, which for some reason is in its extended position at the moment. And you have this lovely swooping tailgate. Now, it is worth noting, however, that the tailgate glass actually stops here. This little piece of glass here is just for show. And admittedly, it does kind of give the car a nice balance. Now, again, because this is a Turbo S, you get more carbon fiber at the back, again to denote that it's a Turbo S, and of course you have the badging, although you can option to have the badge deleted. Now, another option on this car is the frosted glass Porsche logo back here. Now, as standard, if I'm not mistaken, it comes in either white or silver, one of those things, but this car has been optioned to have this lovely blue hue, and I have to say it looks really good. Now, the Porsche Taycan, unlike the Panamera, is not actually a hatchback, it is a saloon, which means when you press this button here, you get a boot. And inside the boot, you will find plenty of space. Although it's not very deep, it is very far-reaching, so you can put a lot of luggage back here and you can travel long distance in this car without concern. And of course, if you want even more space, you can fold the rear seats 40-20-40 for even more convenience. Now, because it's bloody hot, we are going to move inside to talk about the cabin. Now, inside the Porsche Taycan, the car is on because it's hot. Now, what's very clear is, again, where other car makers try to throw the book out in terms of interior design with electric cars, Porsche has decided that it would merely update what it does so well. So ahead of me, instead of the usual 5-dial layout, I have a curved touchscreen. Yes, it is a touchscreen, I'll get to that in a second. But ultimately, it is a digital display, which means a lot of this is very configurable, but it's still laid out in that typical Porsche fashion. And contrary to what a lot of other reviewers say, I can actually see all the dials in here without issue, which means maybe all the other reviewers are just obscenely tall. Now, what does help also is that I have a heads-up display, a full color heads-up display at that, showing me all of my pertinent information right in my line of sight, which is very important in a car that can go 0 to 100 in 2.8 seconds. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this curved display is a touchscreen because there are touch-sensitive controls flanking the screen itself. On the left side, I have the controls for the lights, and on the right side, I have controls for traction control, my sport suspension, my lift system, and a configurable button here in order to do one particular thing. You can set that up through the infotainment system. Now, talking about the infotainment system, it's actually consisted of two screens. You have a wide screen up here, which does the majority of your controls, including your Apple CarPlay. This car does not come with Android Auto. Now, down here, we have another screen which offers a lot of shortcuts. So right on the top, you have a choice between navigation, media, phone, and settings, and then below that are all of your comfort controls, namely things like your air conditioning, your seat ventilation, which this car mercifully has, as well as seat heating, which this car also comes with. Now, what is interesting, however, is that if you're using the built-in navigation, you can use this area as a touchpad in order for you to put handwriting inputs into the display, which I think is rather smart. What is also helpful is that this lower screen is also provided with haptic feedback. So when you press buttons, it doesn't just move, it also vibrates ever so slightly to tell you that you've clicked something. This, I think, is very useful for a screen that you'll be using a lot when you are driving, because while this may be all right for you to use from time to time, this is something you'll be interacting with a lot, and so having haptic here instead of here, or rather haptic on both, does make some degree of sense. In terms of practicality, there is a decent amount of space. You have a very large glove box over there. You have another glove box here, which is not very deep, but it is usable, and there are a couple of USB-C ports in here. You also get a couple of cup holders here. You have door bins here, and this car comes fitted with the Bose audio system, which means you do get Bose speaker grills here, as well as just behind the rear seats, which I must say look really good. Now, talking about the interior design overall, I love the fact that the Taycan, even though it's very high demand and relatively high production for Porsche, they've still maintained a certain degree of personality and personalization options in this car. So this car is fitted with a blonde interior, also known as, to you and I, beige, with a black top and black bottoms as well, which makes this car feel really light and airy and very premium. Worth noting is that these seats are actually the Olia leather seats, which are apparently slightly more sustainably dyed instead of usual leather. What also helps, of course, is the fact that you have this huge fixed glass roof, which I can say today is letting in almost no heat. And that allows this interior to remain nice and airy even though you have black Alcantara headlining. Now, without moving to the rear, because I like the fact that my bum is being kept cool, it is worth noting that this car is not quite as spacious as Porsche's other passenger cars. The Panamera, for example, has a lot more legroom, and same goes for the Porsche Cayenne. And in terms of rear leg space, it's kind of similar to a Macan. However, because of the sloping roofline of this car, it does mean that headroom is a little bit compromised, though Porsche will sell you a Cross Turismo, which will give you a shooting brake aesthetic and a little bit more headroom at the back. The rear seats are actually configured as standard as a two-seater, although for a fee you can upgrade this car to a three-seat bench at the rear, where you have a panel of leather about that wide for somebody who has an arse that is about that wide. Anyway, I think I've waffled on enough about how this car is spec'd. I think it's time for us to get to the drive, and we'll start with the town driving. Right, so it's a very, very busy day for us here at Malaysian Motoring. This morning we've collected this car and we are now on the way to an event in the middle of KL. And so that's going to give us a chance to actually sample this car in sort of real world conditions. Now, as no doubt you've overheard, my Waze is going off in the cup holder because unfortunately Taycans before 2021 did not get Android Auto. So because I'm a plebeian with a Samsung, I can't connect to the car. And rather annoyingly, it's very difficult for me to try and get the car to play my music via Bluetooth. So I'm not sure what that's about. So I guess I just have to travel in silence. Better for it, I guess. This is an electric car after all.
A few moments later.
So we're now on Jalan Sungai Besi. We just passed the Porsche Center in Sungai Besi, not that we stopped. And driving through traffic, the first thing that sort of comes out at me is the fact that this is a very large car. While the Taycan is smaller in footprint than the Panamera, from behind the wheel, the difference feels rather negligible. Because from here, all I can see out the mirrors are the haunches on this car. All I can see out the windscreen are the front wheel arches. And all I know is I'm driving a car that I cannot afford. And I guess that's sort of lingering in the back of it. I guess customers don't really think about that sort of thing. The other thing that stands out is that it's very quiet. Obviously, there is no engine. You don't have a V8 burbling up front as you would in a Panamera. But it's also the insulation from the world around you. Even bikes with no silencers, they're just rolling about and they're just going straight by me and I can't hear a thing. There's a Civic RR in front of me with a massive fake exhaust and I can't hear it. And that's one of the things that strikes me about this car. A lot of people do ask what makes a premium electric vehicle more expensive when mass market or even affordable EVs can have similar power output and similar ranges and so on. And it's the little touches. It's things like that degree of refinement. It's things like the double glazed windows that we get in this car, as well as the air suspension that allows you to cruise over even the worst road conditions without even the slightest bit of hesitation or concern. Although, while I'm not concerned about the road surface, I am concerned about the carbon fiber lip.
A few minutes later.
Okay, so I've just parked and I gotta say, a multi-story car park in a Taycan is very scary. Lalaport Bukit Bintang is clearly not made for cars like this, so maybe I shouldn't have been a cheapskate and just valet park the car. In any case, I have to go for my event now, so it'll be fun to see what it's like to come back to this car later.
6.5 hours later.
Now, it's come towards the evening and I've been driving the Taycan Turbo S for about 4.5 hours combined today. I've done a little over 120 kilometers, just running errands, going to events where we saw the launch of a few other electric cars, and spending a little bit of time with the Taycan as I go from appointment to appointment. And the thing is, you've seen our coverage of the Taycan on the track, so you know what we think of it as a Porsche, a driver's car. But today's experience gave us a little bit more insight about what it's like to live with on a day-to-day basis. The fact that it's this comfortable, this quiet and this civilized, as an electric car, a premium luxury electric car, it also kind of fits the bill. On one hand, I am slightly disappointed that this car only has about 370, 380 kilometers of range on a full charge in realistic conditions, with reasonable driving and reasonable consumption, with maybe a little bit of Sport Plus launch controls. It's just twice because it's fun. The range is slightly disappointing. I would have liked to have seen more, especially given the fact that cars like the Kia EV6 for 300,000 ringgit can do 500 kilometers, for example. But on the whole, this is still ultimately a car that you can live with. It's comfortable, it's quiet, it's serene, and it's civilized. And from behind the wheel, it feels premium. It feels premium to operate. It feels premium to touch and interact with. And that's kind of what this experience is about. Buying a Taycan is just like buying any other Porsche. It's just that you're making a choice between powertrains. The way one would choose between petrol and diesel, now you can choose between petrol and electric. And as far as I'm concerned, the fact that this car is electric, sure, I don't get the sound of a flat six like I would from a 911 or a V8 that I would from a Panamera, but it's not a bad thing. I love the way this car drives, and based on my prior experiences with internal combustion Porsches, it feels like any other Porsche, just one that accelerates blisteringly fast, which is now incredibly irritating as it starts to rain, because as you can imagine, something this powerful in the wet would be rather dangerous. But like I said, because it's civilized, I don't feel scared. I can put this car into range mode and it'll be reasonable. I know that it'll be reasonable because that's what this car is about. And it's brilliant. Now, given the situation that we're in now, with EVs currently being almost completely tax exempt, it does beg the question, is this the EV that you want to buy? Now, the Taycan Turbo S is quite expensive. although the Taycan range starts from a relatively reasonable 555,000 ringgit for the base rear-wheel drive Taycan. If you compare it to some other competitors, for example, the newly launched Mercedes-Benz EQC, if you're just looking at electric cars as a whole, if you compare it to an EQC, that's significantly cheaper and it's got slightly better range, and that might be a better fit for family. But if you're looking for an electric sports car, and that you can fit people in the back, that you can take to meetings, that you can drive every day, day in, day out without concern, the Taycan is pretty much without compare. It's brilliant as far as I'm concerned. And I'm glad that I had this experience, because now I can tell you that this is a car that you can live with on a daily basis. In any case, that has been our very quick review of the Porsche Taycan Turbo S. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell icon so you're notified every time we make a new upload. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. All the links are in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. And now I'm going to turn all my attention to driving this car very carefully in the wet.